Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of my Ahn'Qiraj adventure. This is going to be the densest of the wings that we've done yet. This is Wing 3, the Temple Vestibule. And just as a reminder, if you're coming to this for the first time, these are custom Hearthstone cards created by myself. They're not actually going to be added to the game. So without further ado, let's pop up the guide here. So you'll see the Temple Vestibule has 3 wings. Number of boss rewards, a wing reward, and class challenges, just like all of the rest of them. So what's a little bit different is you'll notice next to the boss there's now a percentage listed, and that's what I figured we'd talk about here first. Now that we're actually inside of the Temple of Ahn'Qiraj, the influence of Cthulhu, the old god, is going to be felt in the fights that you've got, and that percentage right there, that 5%, 6%, or 7%, is the likelihood at the start of a turn that a special effect is going to go into effect, or is going to happen. So let's just pop up this guy. So while we get into this wing, Ahn'Qiraj, who's our guide for this adventure, expresses concern about something that he can't quite identify, that there's a dark presence that he senses. And each turn, like I said, there's a percentage chance at the start of the enemy's turn that one of these 6 different secrets goes into play for free for that particular boss. And you'll see these are 4-cost secrets. And they're adventure cards, so they're crazy powerful. So, Whispers of Betrayal. When your opponent plays a minion, gain control of it. Pretty hardcore. It's mind control for 6 cheaper, but they're not paying for it anyway, so it's insane. Whispers of Cowardice. When an enemy minion is destroyed, so that's one of your minions, then you return all of the enemy minions to their owner's hand. So, basically, when one of your minions is killed, the rest of the minions that you have in play are returned to your hand. Whispers of Death. When your hero takes damage, destroy 2 random enemy minions. So it's like Vaporize, only double crazy. Whispers of Failure. When your opponent casts a spell, counter it and gain a copy of that spell. So a little bit worse than Counterspell. Whispers of Solitude. When an opposing hero power is used, destroy all enemy minions. So you can play around that, obviously, but it's pretty crazy for Swarm decks. And lastly, Whispers of Weakness. When one of your minion dies, cut each enemy minion's health in half, round down. So that includes the hero as well. So if the hero is at 30 health, they drop down to 15, which is pretty serious. So the very first time that this effect triggers, and like I said, in the first fight with Yaj Vem Kree, it's a 5% chance per turn that this will happen. Then Ahn'Qiraj will chime in and say, "It is as I feared. There's an evil influence in these halls." And then the secret gets put into play, and whenever a whisper card is revealed, there's some audio, so you will betray your friends, you're already dead, your courage will fail you. Those are the Whispers of Cthulhu that you can find on Wowpedia that appear throughout the Temple of Ahn'Qiraj adventure. And that audio will play, and the first time that it happens, Ahn'Qiraj says, "Those whispers, could it be?" And during that first time that they've been triggered, each turn thereafter, Ahn'Qiraj chimes in with additional stuff. He says, "I'm afraid that you're in well above your head now. Best to withdraw." And then the turn after that, "Not withdrawing. Courage is not always a virtue, adventurer." And then the turn after that, "Well, I've done my best. I'll send another group to get your corpse later." Because obviously Ahn'Qiraj has very little confidence in your ability, especially in the face of an old god. So if this doesn't happen by happenstance as you're making your way through the fight, then we hardcode in this to occur in the third fight against Prophet Skeram, so that you definitely get to see this effect happen at least once in this wing. Yeah, and that's basically going to become more and more likely the deeper into the temple that you get, until eventually you face Cthulhu himself, itself. So pull that away. And now we can actually start talking about the first boss fight, which is actually not a fair fight at all. It's 3-on-1 versus 3 different bugs. Princess Yaj, Vem, and Kree. So here's the hero power. 3-on-1. The death rattle for the enemy hero is replace your hero with another random bug. And throughout the fight, there are switcheroo cards, maybe 4 or 5 of them, in the enemy deck. And when that card is drawn, then you replace your hero with another random bug and draw a card. So what does that mean? Well, maybe I should have showed you the other one first. This fight is very similar to the Horse Riders fight from Naxxramas. And I say kind of like, but what I mean is that it's totally different. So I've just popped up the 3 different bug cards that all start play. One of them randomly is the enemy hero, and the other 2 are in play. And while they're in play, they are immune, and they all have effects that occur when they become the hero. So Yaj restores 1 health to all friendly minions. Vem returns a random enemy minion to its owner's hand, and Kree deals 1 damage to all enemy minions. And you'll notice they all only have 8 health. So when they're the hero, they gain 8 health. And they become vulnerable while they're the enemy hero. And if you knock them down to 0 health, they get spat out according to that hero power and replaced with another random bug. And when that happens, their overall health is restored to half the value that they had before. So you have to beat them at 8 health each, and then 4 health each, and then 2 health each. And when you kill them from 2 health, then they're permanently removed from the battle. And our host Ahn'Qiraj provides a little bit of guidance for you as a player, so that you're aware that as you beat them, they appear to be a little bit weaker. So keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing great. So that is the Yaj, Vem, and Kree fight. And from that, you get the first of the different boss rewards, which is the Qiraji Champion. And it's a 3-cost 2/3 minion, so a little bit understated. But it has a battle cry: reveal a minion in each deck. If yours costs more, summon a Qiraji Champion. So this is a joust effect, and basically what it does is it allows you to have depending on the matchup, somewhere around a 40% chance of having a second Qiraji Champion. So that would be 3 mana for 4/6 worth of stats, which is pretty darn good. And with Brand Bronzebeard, this happens twice. It's possible you might even be able to get 3 of these guys. So the reason I went down this route is he's a champion. It's a trash mob in the game, in the Temple of Ahn'Qiraj. And I figured since he's a champion, we could probably rely on that joust-like effect. It's thematically correct. And in terms of comparison, we can look at Gadgetzan Jouster, I think, which is that 1 mana 1/2 that gets +1/+1. With the Qiraji Champion, you're spending 3 mana to get 2/3, which is bad, or you're spending 3 mana to get 4/6, which is good. It is a bigger swing. It's a little bit more variance that's introduced, but the worst case scenario is worse than the 1 mana 1/2 that you would get from the Gadgetzan. And if you look at it, if you assume that the odds of winning a joust are 40%, then what you're actually getting is you're getting a 2.8 attack and a 4.2 health, which adds up to 7, which is roughly appropriate for a 3 mana card. So in that way, I think it's really quite properly balanced and allows for some interesting combinations that can occur. Echoing Ooze, maybe another card we can use to compare it to. It's another one that gives you two minions for a single card. Um, for 2 mana, you get 2/4 worth of stats, but you get that option to tack on additional effects for the split that happened. For 1 more mana, you're getting a little bit more stats guaranteed, with a chance of getting significantly better stats. And while Echoing Ooze seems weak, that ability to buff it really does make it a pretty good 2 mana card in the correct circumstances. So at 3 mana, I consider the Qiraji Champion to be a very reasonable fit in decks that require a strong presence in the early mid-game or the late early game. And it also, if you look at the series of Joust cards that are out there, there is no 3 mana Joust card, so it kind of fills out that position on the curve quite admirably. And lastly, maybe we can compare this to Feral Spirits as well. It's also a 3-cost card, which has 2 overload, mind you, to guarantee having the effect and having minions with taunt. So, if anything, I find Qiraji Champion to be less good than Feral Spirits, but it's not a class card. So there we go. There is our Qiraji Champion. Following up with that, the second fight that we have is a fight against Sarchura. And Sarchura as a hero has a 3 mana whirlwind effect, deal 1 damage to all minions. But at the end of turn 1, she summons her Royal Guard to her, which means in the basic version you get 2 of these Royal Guardsmen, with a third one that gets added in the expert area. And these guys are 4 mana cards, 1/8, that have taunt, and whenever this minion takes damage, it deals 1 damage to a random enemy. So there's some great synergy with the hero power in this fight, and the deck itself is loaded full of cards that deal damage to all minions. So the regular Whirlwind card and those sorts of things. So Circle of Healings as well to kind of heal them back up, as well as some reinforcement cards that are in the deck that summon 2 additional Royal Guards. So as the fight goes on, she can replenish her stock of defenders. And one thing I didn't quite figure out is what I was going to do if they were subject to some kind of board clearing effect. So say like a Twisting Nether happens, do I want to have some kind of hard-coded additional effect where she'll summon new ones if you use hard removal to destroy all of the minions, or like a Equality Consecrate? I'm not really sure. I'd have to do some actual play balance testing to figure out whether or not that fits the level of difficulty that I'm looking for. But the Sarchura fight mainly has to do with these Royal Guardsmen and these hero powers that deal damage to stuff, as well as a ton of cards that synergize off of dealing damage. So, I don't think I want to put Grim Patrons in here just because they belong in Blackrock and it would be a weird fit for them to suddenly show up in the Temple of Ahn'Qiraj, but you never know. Again, I didn't work out the specifics of what this deck could be. And our reward for beating a Sarchura is the second card that's available here, which is the Qiraji Scorpion, which is a 4 mana 2/5 card. Whenever this minion destroys another minion, return it to full health. So obviously Control Hunter is a thing that we have tried effortlessly to try to make work. And the Qiraji Scorpion is a good mid-costed minion, specifically with the intent of being really powerful at removing minions from the board and taking control of it. So not a lot of cards like this, but probably the best example is Stoneskin Gargoyle, which, don't laugh, it's a terrible card, but I think the Qiraji Scorpion is significantly better for a couple of different reasons. Costs 1 less mana. Stoneskin Gargoyle costs less. It has terrible stats. Like, having a minion with only 1 attack is not very good at all. and it can restore up to 3 health at the is it the start or the end of every turn? Not that it matters. No one plays this card. At 5 health, Qiraji Scorpion is tougher to remove, and at 2 attack, it's more than capable of clearing out a number of different minions and being the killing blow in killing those minions in order to bring it back up to its full health. And if you had, say, a board like a paladin board full of 1/1 tokens, and you manage to taunt this guy up with a Houndmaster or something like that, Houndmaster, Beastmaster. Anyways, that 4/3 Hunter card, then you're looking at a 4/7 card that's just going to be a nightmare to remove. So really powerful synergies in the Hunter class with it. I guess we can also compare it to Reno Jackson, sort of, in that it has a effect that heals something back up to full health. But with Reno, it's health, and it can be up to 29. With the Qiraji Scorpion, under reasonable circumstances, it's only going to be up to 4 health, maybe 6 health if you buff him a little bit. But Scorpion's significantly lower statted, and its condition is much, much easier to hit. So it's a nice little control hunter card that maybe ends up seeing some good solid play. Then lastly, we have the Prophet Skeram fight. And Prophet Skeram is this guy we see in the background right here. He's really a marquee character in the world of the ruins of Ahn'Qiraj. So, well, normally in the fight, you see that as soon as you get into the temple, Prophet Skeram is the first mandatory encounter that you've got, and there's really no way to get around him. But for the purpose of this adventure, because he is a marquee character, I decided to put him at the end of the Temple Vestibule so that he could be the hero reward card. And also because he has lines of dialogue that he says, and he's just a more interesting sounding encounter than either Sartura or the Bug Trio. And this is his special ability, the Quartile Split. Whenever your hero takes damage, summon 2/0/2 mirror images with taunt. So that's basically a perpetual mirror image that happens. So obviously, tactically speaking, you need ways to get rid of minions cheaply, and then you need a big attack of some kind. So burst your decks, probably Oil Rogue, for instance, are going to be really, really effective in this fight. But it also turns out that the Prophet Skeram deck also has a number of minions, which I haven't put together, that allow for him to get stealing effects off at a much cheaper cost. So it'll be something like a Battle Cry. Your mind controls cost 6 less or something like that. Or the next mind control spell that you play costs 6 less. And he relies on really using your deck against it. So things like Shadow Madness and probably Death Lords and such, in order to make that encounter difficult for you. And your reward for getting rid of this dude is the Qiraji Mindslayer, which is a 4-mana 5/6, which is a really good stat, so it better have some kind of drawback that makes it not worthy of being played. And in this case, it's a Death Rattle that deals 1 damage to each adjacent minion. So, as I've said before a couple of times, I really like cards that require forethought in terms of minion placement. So cards like Defender of Argus and Wee Spellstopper really, really do it for me. And the Qiraji Mindslayer is an attempt to bring a negative detriment to being adjacent to minions. So I think we best compare here to the Pit Lord, which has the same stats. It's a 4-mana 5/6. The possibility of doing up to 2 damage to minions is probably better than doing 5 damage to the hero as a battle cry. But when was the last time you really saw anyone use Pit Lord in a fight? I think that the Qiraji Mindslayer is far more viable. And if you do think that it's a little bit too much, then offering it as either a 4 mana 4/6 or maybe a 4 mana 5/5 is possibly the way that you go down here. And I guess also you can look at Succubus and Wrathguard and Flame Imp. They're all Warlock cards that you pay some kind of price for some kind of bonus and stats. And the Mindslayer really fits that. One thing I'll say is that the Warlock class tends to build a lot of 1/1 tokens, so this drawback might be more considerable than you might think at first glance. And also, just because it's kind of fun, it is a possible piloted Sky Golem drop, so that negative advantage could have some real fun during that fight. So, like I said, 4 mana 4/6 or maybe a 5/5. Would love to know what you think there. And lore-wise, these are another mob that happens in Ahn'Qiraj. They tend to go travel in packs. They tend to be like the best minion in a series of fights with the Qiraji Champions. There's nothing really too special about them. All right, and once you've cleared out that wing, you end up getting the wing reward for this particular challenge, which is our good man Prophet Skeram himself. And he's an 8 mana 5/8, so pretty weak stats, so his battle cry better make up for it. And in this case, it's if your hero has less health than your opponent, take control of a minion with 3 or less attack. So this introduces the ability for all classes to take control of enemy minions. Whereas previously that was an effect that was reserved entirely for the priest class. And there's a couple of very nice conditionals that have been attached to this card that I think make it balance out and make it a worthwhile addition to a number of different decks, but certainly not every deck. So I guess in terms of comparison, we can look at Mind Control. Prophet Skeram costs 2 less and comes with a 5/8 body, which is pretty significant. But we have 2 different conditions that have to be met. One is the health one, so if this minion has, or you have to have less health than your enemy, and you also need to target a minion with 3 or less attack. So in regard to those conditions, I view this as an adequate come from behind mechanic and not something that is too powerful, given that you can't take any minion. You can probably only take, I don't know, maybe 30% of the minions that are out there. I haven't really done the research to find out what percentage of viable targets there are out there, but probably a better comparison is Cabal Shadow Priest, which is a priest card. This costs 2 more than the Cabal Shadow Priest. It's not a class minion, but it is a legendary minion. And Cabal Shadow Priest has a worse body. It's a 4/5. But given that this is a legendary status card, and that there is that health limitation, I feel like giving it a slightly bigger range, because with Shadow Priest it's 2 or less attack. I feel that there's a pretty good balance out there. So I guess really the kind of decks that would gain a benefit from Prophet Skeram are ones that are very patient, that punish aggression. So things like Control Warrior, Control Priest, and likely a number of different Warlock decks, like all of the Handlock and maybe Melee Lock and Combo Lock. Ones that you know you're gonna have less than your opponent or less health than your opponent because of your hero power. It really is a nice little card that can give you some longevity. And I mean, you throw him in Priest, and he's just a cheaper mind control for the right condition, and a more expensive but slightly more impactful Cabal Shadow Priest. So who is this guy? Well, he's a cultist of Cthulhu, and he's also a pretty mean dude. So he gets to be the boss of the Temple of Vestibule. Alright, so moving on into our class challenges. The first one that we have is a priest. So I apologize, in the class challenges in the guide below, shaman is listed first. I actually swapped the shaman to go into the Skeram fight and made a little bit of a mistake there. So the first class challenge is against Sartura, and it is a priest. And the idea in that fight is you run a whole bunch of high health minions, and you run a lot of the reward card, which I'll just pop that up right now. The combat medic, you run quite a few of those. You also run some Northshires, so you can go full Northshire if you really want to. Probably like 3 or 4 different Northshires, at least 4 different combat medics, and probably some Confuse or Alchemist to allow for a killing mechanic in this fight. Because remember, Sartura has some high health minions, and they're constantly getting damage done to each other, so they constantly need healing back up with the combat medic. So earlier, I said I really like the importance of minion placement, and the combat medic is probably the best example in this set that I've got of where minion placement is important. I don't think this is the 2-drop that Priest needs in terms of giving them an early game card that allows for them to take the board early. That's been something that a lot of different people have tried to fix. I think this solves a slightly different problem, which isn't to say it's not a good card, it just isn't the card that that really locks down the board in the early game and, you know, combats against things like Paladin's mech. So in that regard, it is a very strong effect. It basically allows you to use your hero power twice and leaves a body behind for 2 mana. It can be played on turn 2 after a turn 1 play that trades into an enemy unit. So let's say you drop a Northshire Cleric and your enemy drops a Shielded Minibot, you can attack and pop the Divine Shield, and then on turn 2 drop the Combat Medic to restore your Northshire back up to full health and draw a card out of the deal. So it is okay in the early game in the correct circumstances, but it really relies on having other minions on the board to really bring out the maximum value. And really the design goal of this card was to give an Armorsmith-like card to the Priest class that allows for them to continue to keep up the tempo of a fight. So it is useful in existing deck archetypes, but I want to enable more of a tempo style of Priest, maybe like a working Shadow Priest. So when compared to the Armorsmith, it's got the exact same stat line. It is a 2 mana 1/4. Combat Medic's effect is more immediate, whereas Armorsmith has the potential for a larger net result. Both offer really good synergies with their classes. Combat Medic synergizes with Light Warden, Holy Champion, Northshire Cleric, whereas the Armorsmith pairs up really well with Whirlwind Revenge and, you know, the entire Patron suite of cards. It also compares to Defender of Argus. It's 2 more. Let's see. It's 2 more. This is a class minion. It doesn't really increase the health of minions. It only restores health. It doesn't grant extra attack. It doesn't grant taunt. It does restore 2 health instead of increasing health by 1. And in that regard, I feel like it balances out just fine. And lastly, I guess we can compare this to Darkscale Healer, which is a card you probably don't even remember exists in the game. It's the one that is a 5 mana 4/5, and it restores 2 health to all friendly characters. No one plays that card, but I figured I'd include it here because it's a restore 2 health to a lot of stuff, and you'll see that you pay significantly less for restoring 2 health to adjacent minions than you do to restore 2 health to everything. And that's because Healer is terrible. Combat Medic's effect is more isolated and therefore more cost effective. So lore-wise, I really didn't, you know, there is no mob in the game called the Combat Medic. But because the Scarab Wall is kind of a battlefront, I figured there would be a need for medics that actually wade into combat and do restore health to minions. So that's kind of where this lady is inspired from. And that's the reward for defeating Sarchira in the Priest class challenge. Next up, after that, we have the Shaman going up against Prophet Skeram. And this deck is a very aggressive Shaman deck. It has quite a few low-cost minions to help remove the tokens that Prophet Skeram summons, as well as a few Eradicators that really allow for a big push at the end. And there is a ton of burn cards in the deck that have Overload that help you use the Obsidian Eradicator as a finisher. So who is this Obsidian Eradicator? He's a 4-mana 2/5 as well. So along with Qiraji Scorpion, that's a stat line that I've used a couple of different times in this wing. But whenever you play a card with Overload, gain 3 attack this turn. And looks like I missed a comma after Overload. But the idea with this deck is to provide a Shaman with a Frothing Berserker-like finisher. It also follows a trend of low attack but high health Shaman minions that are tough to get rid of. So like that new 4-mana 2/6 that does damage whenever a Battle Cry minion is played. That seems like a pattern that's worth repeating as far as I'm concerned. So in terms of comparison, Frothing Berserker is the best comparison that we can make. They cost the same amount of mana, they have the same starting attack. Frothing Berserker has 1 less health, but Frothing's effect is permanent, while Eradicator only happens for 1 turn, and by my estimation, it's just about as easy to get plus 14 on a Frothing Berserker as it is to maybe get plus 9 on an Eradicator with the proper board setup. So, this isn't a minion that you really slap down on turn 4 and start pushing for face with. This is more a minion that you sit back with, and when the time is right, you play it, you protect it, and then the next turn you unleash Fury with this card. And it's a lot of burst potential, so it's a card that would have to be looked at fairly closely. I'm comfortable with the stats as is. Testing may reveal that it's too much, in which case maybe we make it like a 0/5 or a 1/5 or some other variation of stats, or maybe we only give it plus 2 attack this turn, and oh man, I really messed up with my card pedantry on this card. So it's missing a comma, and attack should be capitalized. So my apologies for that. But I guess another place we can compare it to is the Mana Addict, and the Mana Addict is, 2-mana card. It's a 1/3. It's a 1/2, so it's got significantly better stats. It's a class card. The effect is plus 3 instead of plus 2. I argue somewhat that all spells that a Shaman has don't necessarily have Overload, but there are some minions that do. So the actual card pool of possible cards you'd play in order to make the Obsidian Eradicator stronger is probably a little bit less than the Mana Addict. And really, the Mana Addict doesn't see significant play right now. Occasionally in a Tavern Brawl, you'll see that card come out and it'll shine. But on average, I think the Obsidian Eradicator is a good addition to Shaman. It allows for the kind of deck that pushes Shaman into viability. It has controlling aspects in terms of being a strong kind of mid-range finisher. I'm a little concerned about the ability for the class to grant Wind Fury. So you could buff this